guys, we are starting a new chapter and this section is actually pretty straightforward. So if you prefer the textbook, you can totally get what we are going to talk about just reading the textbook. Okay. So today we'll be focusing on defining some terms and distinguishing these three things that we're going to look into: survey, observation, study, and experiment, and to know when to use what in the most appropriately. Yeah, that was not right grammatically. But moving on. So let's actually define what statistics is. So statistics can be used in two different ways. So it can be a study of data, right? So usually when we talk about statistics, we talk about, like it's a data, like we have a way of organizing the data, we have a way of representing the data. That's what statistics is, and you're right. It is a study, but also it's numerical values from the data. So when you have heard of like mean, median, mode, those are all considered statistics. So those individual numerical values that we have calculated from our data are also called statistics. Statistics as a study is a study of population. So population is what we are interested in. So it's a greater group. This is our interest. But we can't always gather data from everyone that we're interested in. Sometimes that is very oftentimes is very time consuming and it will cost a lot of money. And that's not very idealistic. So statistics is a study that you use sample. So you gather data, and data is the sample. Hopefully that will represent the population so that when we study about the sample, we can make an inference about the interested population. So the goal is to making an inference. So we're taking something smaller to say something about greater thing. That's what statistics is. Population, as I said, don't be fooled by this word. It doesn't mean like the population of Jordan or population of the US, population Korea. It's not that. It can be just Whitman students be my population, or it can be just 10th grade as a population. So greater, I don't know if you have heard of this, there's something called census. US census is well known, but a lot of different countries do census, and actually King David from the Bible did census, and he was punished because God didn't want him to do census. Census basically means that you are reaching out to every single individual in your population, and you gather all the data and you make something, you say something about your population. And it is the most, I guess like in a way, accurate way to know about your population, because you're not leaving anyone out. So there is no what's the word? Anomaly, like someone who's like very unusual, right? Because you are covering everything, so you're seeing from the very unusual to like very usual generic things, right? So census is surveying. So we are going to look at surveying every single one in your population. That's what census is. We don't use it often, and that's why the US Census only happens like every 4 or 5 years, because it takes so much like computing power to process all this data and make sense out of what the data is saying and actually present it. So census oftentimes takes a really long time unless your population is small. So I'm sure doing a census at Whitman is not that a big of a deal because we only have like 120, 50, right? You could probably do it all in one day, gather data in one day, and process data in one day, and then present the data on the next day. So like it takes total of 3 days maybe. Like census will take longer time, so it may not be as accurate by the time you actually get to look at the data and say, oh, I see that this group of people are struggling with this kind of thing. Well, maybe it's different because you are now getting an information that's 6 months old or like 8 months old, right? So that's why people prefer survey. Survey, you know what it is. You've done it multiple times, even at Whitman. Like we ask questions like, evaluate this teacher, tell me what you thought about the online schooling, or just anything in between, right? Those are surveys. You can check off like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can rate, or you can write your own opinion, or you can like type numbers, like if it's asking for your height or weight and things like that. So survey is questions, right? Just different questions. You just answer. Observational study is a little different. As you can see from the word, observation means you're observing something. So you're not doing anything to anyone. You just kind of like, so it's what Mr. Doyle does sometimes. Like he walks into our classroom and he just watches us, right? He doesn't, I think sometimes he does, but like he doesn't necessarily ask questions. He doesn't interact with me. He doesn't interact with you. He just kind of watches you, right? That's what observational study is. And looking at the past record can be considered as an observational study. So for example, if I'm looking at your Algebra 1 grade and then comparing it to your Algebra 2 grade, that is considered observational study because I haven't done anything directly to you. I'm just looking at something that you have done, and I'm looking at something that you are doing now and comparing it, right? So that's an observational study. Experiment is actually what scientists want to do because experiment is the only thing that you can establish cause and effect relationship. So you know how people often say that smoking, for example, you cannot say smoking causes cancer. And sometimes the reason people use that argument is because it's not very ethical to put someone on an experiment of like smoking, because even though it's not proven that there is a very strong correlation that if you smoke, you are more likely to get lung cancer and die, right? And it's not very ethical to like bring people in and say, well, smoke like each day and tell me how you feel at the end of the experiment, right? Because experiment calls for treatment. And if there's no treatment, you can't say it's an experiment. So like maybe every day I give you I don't know, maybe your mother gives you like a healthy juice every morning, and we want to observe, even though I'm using the word observe, I want to see if your if you are getting any taller. And then like, let's say we are doing this for 6 months and your mother decided to give you this like healthy smoothie every morning. And there are other group of students who are not drinking anything for the morning. So like nothing special. And the treatment would be this healthy smoothie every morning for 6 months. And then we're comparing the result like did your mood improve? Did you get taller? Or like, did you perform better at school? Like those things. Like we are trying to control the variables and try to establish cause and effect experiment. And you can see from what I'm telling you how hard it might be to control the experiment because there are just so many variables going in. Even if you have some kind of conclusive data, that you might not be able to confidently say that this causes this, because what if there were other variables that you weren't able to count in to your experiment, right? So like experiment actually takes a really long time to set it up, and you need to study different things before you can say this is the control group, this is the treatment, this is the people who will be on this experiment type of things. Even though I said the experiment is the only way to establish cause and effect relationship, if you have a really well-designed observational study, sometimes a very strong correlation, if it happened repeatedly, like for example, smoking. The reason people almost say it as a cause and effect, that smoking will harm your health, is because even though they couldn't have done experiment, they have a lot of evidences from the observational studies that it shows a very high correlation and very strong positive correlation between, I guess, like packs of cigarette that you smoke a day and then like I guess your health condition or something. So experiment has something called control group, because you think about it, if I give you treatment to everyone, and there was nobody who wasn't getting any treatment, or like there was no control group. But then the only thing I can say is that maybe the higher treatment produces this and lower treatment produces this, but I don't have any baseline to say that this treatment works better than not having a treatment. Does it make sense? So control group is very important because it gives you a baseline to compare to the things that you want to say like something different about. Another word that might show up in the experiment is placebo. Placebo is sometimes given to the control group because placebo refers to like a fake pill. So your mind is very interesting and it does a lot of different things. And so you could, if you are receiving a medicine, even though it's a sugar pill, so like there is no active ingredient in it, but by taking the medicine, your brain might think, oh, this will heal me and actually heal you, right? So the scientists have observed the power of mind. So they give you the placebo pill so that we can actually calculate the chance. Like, is this by a random incident that this person got better? Or do we have enough evidence to say that this pill actually works to, make people feel better kind of thing? So placebo is given so that the people are not because let's say I'm giving like Lydia a pill and then Sunny no pill, right? And then I'm saying if you take this pill, you might do better in math, right? Then Lydia, even if it's a fake pill, she might really believe in it. And Sunny might really believe in I'll probably do worse than Lydia because I didn't get the pill. Do you see how mind works both ways? So to eliminate that the scientists usually give placebo to eliminate as many variables as possible. So let's look at some of the questions that can come up with this kind of words, okay? So this one says, state whether each survey would produce a random sample. Oh, we didn't talk about random sample. So the random sample is important because we don't want a biased sample. So there is something called bias and unbiased. And the only thing that produces unbiased result is a random sample. Because bias means like this. Think about it. People who write review on a website. So you went to a coffee shop and it was terrible. Then you're probably more likely to write a review about it because most people don't want to take time to write reviews. Either your experience was extremely pleasant and so you write something about it, or it was extremely terrible, so you write something about it. So if it's a voluntary sample, meaning that you can volunteer to do the survey or not, then your sample is going to be very biased because people who have a more strong opinion will participate. And random in statistics means that everyone has an equal chance of being selected. So most common way to do this is drawing your name from a cup, because I have no way of knowing who will be drawn and you have no way of knowing that you will be drawn, right? So that is equal chance. Everyone has the same percentage of getting picked and you got picked, right? So let's look at this. Survey every third person coming out of the ice cream shop to find people's favorite type of dessert. Would you say this is biased or unbiased? This is a biased sample. It's not random. Think about it. You went to ice cream shop. That means you like ice cream probably better than any other dessert, because if you had other options that you like more, you probably would have gone into it, right? So this question, asking people's favorite type of dessert, will produce an biased sample because people are coming out from ice cream shop, right? It's not random. To fix this survey, you could ask their favorite type of ice cream, right? Then it's totally random because they all went to the ice cream shop, so you know they like some kind of ice cream. And you're not really giving them anything in their mind to determine, oh, I like chocolate better, or I like cookies and cream better. You're not putting anything in their mind. So it's still a random sample, but this question itself is not. A teacher sends every student whose last name ends with the chosen letter to the blackboard. That's random, right? Because it doesn't mean that if your last name starts with L, you're smarter, or like not so smart, right? Anything like that. So this one, we can consider it unbiased, and it's random. Everyone has the same chance.